Hello Flosstube friends, thank you so much for joining me for another video. Today I'm going to be covering the different tools that I use while I am stitching. Recently I've gotten some more questions about different products that I use, and I thought I would take the opportunity to share with you guys on camera what it is that I use as I am stitching. So before we get into anything, I just want to let you know that all of the information about the products and tools shown here in this video will be in the drop-down box below. So if you see something here on the video that you're interested in purchasing for yourself, please check that drop-down box and you should be able to find a link if it is available to me, or at least the name of the product. And then you can go ahead and search for that on your own, either online or at your own local needlework shop. I will also link any videos that I mentioned or any related videos that I think might be helpful to you. So if you are watching on your television screen, you actually can access that information box by using your remote to access the different settings. And then of course, if you're just watching on a laptop or an iPad or something, you can just scroll down a bit and click read more where that box is underneath the actual picture. So let's go ahead and start with hoops first thing. That is what I get questions about more than anything else. These are the hoops that I use. These are all Hardwick Manor hoops, and you can purchase them directly from hoopandframe.com, but they're not always in stock. There seems to be a supply and demand issue sometimes, but there are needlework shops, brick and mortar shops that sell them, and then there are other online shops that sell them as well. So as I say, go ahead and just search Hardwick Manor hoop. If you're searching for one of these, you should be able to find any available products online, but you can also check with your local shop as well. I'll go over the different sizes. This is the smallest of the oval hoops that they make. They only make two sizes in the oval. It's this one, which is a 6 by 3.5 inch oval. And then they also make this size, which is a 9 by 5 oval. I find that those are really helpful. This one is my favorite simply because it's easy to hold in the hand. It's very lightweight, and I can get a lot of stitching in this little area here if I'm stitching on 46 or 56 count before I have to move the hoop. There is a lot of stitching area in there. This longer one, this 9-inch wide oval, is great for borders. So depending on the size of your piece, your sampler, your whatever it may be that you're working on, this can often stretch the entire length of one side of the piece, which means you can do a whole side, an entire side of border without having to move your hoop, which is really great, really convenient. Now, this is the same small hoop. I really just had a few hoops of my own, and then a friend was getting rid of her hoops, and so she passed along the Hardwick Manor hoops that she had to me, and she had wrapped several of them in this twill tape. Now, you can see that I did it on this larger one, and I wrapped it in such a way that I did not use glue, which means I had to sort of tuck the tail end under when I was wrapping it and getting to the end. She used glue when she wrapped hers, which means she has a thinner, neater finish, but of course there is the risk that the glue will eventually come undone. But when you're wrapping your hoops with twill tape, if you choose to do so, you have a couple options when you are finishing it up. Twill tape is also available on the Hoop and Frame website, and you can get it from other shops, of course. It is useful if you want to get a really tight fit with your hoop, but it's not necessary. I use this hoop more than I use any other hoop, and it is not wrapped, and I like it just fine. I think I get a nice tight fit, and it works really well. This is a square round hoop. This is a 7-inch by 5.5 inch size, and this is really great because I have stitched so many pieces that actually are smalls and fit completely within this hoop, which means I put it on, I stitch the piece from start to finish, and I never have to take off the hoop or move it. I also have, people question whether or not you need to move your hoop or remove it every day, or at least loosen it every day. I have left my hoops on pieces where they are covering stitches. I have left them on for days. I've even forgotten and left them on for weeks at a time. It happens, and it's okay. I haven't had any problems restoring the linen to its original, original shape, whatever you want to call it, and getting those stitches back to their nice puffy original look. So if you forget to take your hoop off at the end of the night after you've been stitching for a while, or you just choose not to, don't worry, because I have found in my experience that a good spritzing and a hot iron will restore everything to how it needs to be. And if you are curious as to how I iron and prep my finished pieces for finishing, I will link a video below that shows in that video exactly what I do to wet and iron a finished piece. This is a round hoop, obviously. This is a 6-inch round, and then this is, I guess it would be a 4-inch round. Again, both Hardwick Manor hoops. The round ones are much less expensive than these odd-shaped ones, and I believe it's because the odd-shaped ones, the oval, and then the round square ones, I think those have to be made by hand, and I suspect that these round ones can be made by machine, or whatever the process is, it is less intensive, and therefore these round ones are less expensive. So if you're looking to try a hoop for the first time, but you don't want to spend $50, $60 on a hoop, you can get one of these round Hardwick Manor hoops at this time, March of 2026, for around $10 or $12. So you can check those out. Another good tool to have in your tool bag, if you are using hoops, is a flathead screwdriver. I, for a long while, was not using a screwdriver to tighten my hardware here, but I will tell you that this is a game changer. I can tighten the hoop as much as I can with my fingers, pull on the linen, and then go ahead with the flathead screwdriver, tighten it even more, pull around the linen, and I get drum tight linen in that hoop using that method. So I would really recommend keeping a screwdriver with you if you are using a hoop. If you are traveling, of course, if you're at home, then you could probably just get one out of the tool drawer. But when I travel, I often bring a flathead screwdriver with me. All right, then kind of adjacent to hoops, I often use, I will pile these up here, move them over here. I often use a cross stitch stand. Now, this is a Velky Pataki cross stitch stand, and this is the mini, but this is an older style of mini, and Velky Pataki, which I will link below, they still make cross stitch stands, and they still make a cross stitch stand that they call the mini. However, the design of the head here is much different. Karen Combs, in one of her videos, I believe it's video number 56, and again, I will link that below, just after the 1 hour mark, she shows this older mini and compares it to the newer mini and shows the differences between the heads. If you like the look of this stand and you like its functions and you are looking to purchase one for the first time, I would no longer recommend the mini from Velky Pataki because the head has changed so much and it does not work the same way that this one does. I would recommend the modern. So if you are looking to treat yourself to a stand from Velky Pataki and you use hoops, I would recommend going with the modern. They have, unfortunately, the modern is a little bit more expensive than the mini, but if you really think that you're going to use it a lot, and it is an investment, but if you really think you're going to use it a lot, I would heartily recommend it. I have had this one for a couple years now, and it's wonderful to have when I just want to save my wrist a bit, because I can go ahead and I can pick up whatever hoop it is. These are 5/16 of an inch thick, and I can tighten this all the way so that it will hold this hoop. And I'm not going to keep doing this because the whole setup here is wiggling and the camera is wiggling as well. But these also hold much thicker hoops, and they hold Q-snaps as well. And they also hold needlepoint frames. So if you are a needlepointer and you put your needlepoint canvases on stretcher bars, those fit in here as well, and I know that from personal experience. The issue with the new version of the Mini is that the clamp on the head only holds very thick hoops and thicker. So I think it would hold Q-snap still, but it does not hold these very thin 5/16 of an inch hoops. So that is the issue. So as I say, if you're looking to splurge and get yourself something like this, I would really recommend the modern style. And they have an absolutely gorgeous limited edition one that is made of walnut. It's absolutely gorgeous, but that one is even more expensive. But I love my Velky Pataki stand and I use it very often. Another weird thing that I have come across is this weight. This is something that I was given when I attended a beginner's needlework class. And this is a weight. It is intended to put on a canvas that has stretcher bars on it, and you weight it and let it hang over the table, and then you can stitch two-handed if you so desire, and it kind of holds it. It does what a stand does, but of course, it's just holding it with the weight. It's not holding it with a clamp. But what I have found with this is because it has a loop on it, is that I can put it here on this knob and my cross stitch stand doesn't wiggle at all. It is, you know, it depends on what table you're using. There might be a little bit of an imbalance because it does have 4 corners. It doesn't have a flat bottom. It has 4 corners and it kind of swoops on the bottom. It's kind of curved like this, you can see. So sometimes it gets a little wiggly, and I have found by using this weight here that I got from that needlepoint class, it's very stable. So that was a happy accident that I came across. But Velky Pataki, I would highly recommend their stands. I just love it. And this, I will look up the color to make sure what it is, and I will put that in the drop-down box below. So if you like this color, you can look for that same one. Okay, next I will talk about needles. I mean, if you're cross-stitching at all, you know needles, you know what you need to use, but I will just let you know what my preferences are. I use 28s. I have used 28s from the very beginning. These are 28 John James, but my favorites are 28 Colonial Petites, and I will show you the difference in size. So in my left hand here is a John James size 28, and then to the right of it, I have put a Colonial Petite, and you can see that it is quite a bit shorter. The eye is smaller and narrower, and the needle itself is narrower. You can get both of these at 1-2-3 Stitch, but you may even be able to get them at your local needle workshop. There are plenty of stitchers who think, who believe, who feel that you should use certain needles for certain thread counts, certain needles for certain flosses. I use and have used size 28 for everything, even on 56 count, I used a needle this size. When I was able to try these 28 Colonial Petites, I loved them so much that I now use these for everything. Even lower count fabrics like 40. 40 is the lowest that I stitch on, so I should make that clear. So I will use this tiny little needle on 40 count, even when I could use this larger needle. And I used this larger size needle on 56 count before I was introduced to these Colonial Petites. But really just find and use the needles that work for you. Some people prefer a larger needle in their hand. They like that there's more area to grip, but I prefer the smaller needle. One reason that I prefer the smaller needle is that I can get more stitches out of a length of floss if I use a smaller needle, because when you get to the end of the floss, you know, the distance that you need, the length of floss that you need to move that smaller needle in and out of your fabric, you know, it changes. It changes depending on what size needle you have. So you can get more stitches out of a length of floss if you're using a shorter needle. And on the subject of needles, you're gonna want some way to store your needles. Now, you may have a little paper packet like this. This was something that I received at a retreat, but of course you could make something like this yourself. I'll open it up and show you again. This is very simple, just folded together. Then there's a slit here in the front that this tab tucks into. You know, this isn't the most secure thing. I have put this in various project bags and find that some needles are coming out. That's no big deal. If you want something a little more secure, I would recommend a magnetic box like this. It has a magnet here in the center to hold the needles. And then of course these super strong magnets on the corners mean that your lid and the box itself are not coming apart until you pull them apart. You can also purchase or make your own needle book. This is something that I made and I never tire of showing it. So. Also in the needle department, you may want something like this. This is a thread hopper. This is made by Big Toe Designs. I purchased this at a needle workshop a few years ago. It was something that I had seen on 123 Stitch. They still sell them on 123 Stitch. And basically the idea is that if you need to count a great distance, you can put one needle in where you want to start and then count over and put the other needle in where you want to end. This is not an absolutely necessary purchase, but I was glad to have it. I think I paid $10 or $12 for it. They're even less than that on 123 Stitch. So if you think this would be useful to you, or you just like the little bits and bobs, this is something that you can check out. A lot of stitchers also use needle minders. I kind of go back and forth. There are some projects that I have a needle minder with, and so when I am stitching that project, I will use the needle minder, but as a rule, I don't use them. I feel that my needle, when I'm taking a break from stitching or I am putting the project away in the project bag and it's going to be there for a significant amount of time, I feel that my needle is more secure if I tuck it in the corner of the fabric rather than leave it on a needle minder like this. But a lot of stitchers really love them. I would say if you get a needle minder, it's good to purchase them in person because then you can really test the strength of the magnet. I have a few needle minders that I have been given at various retreats and things, and they have very weak magnets, so I really don't feel comfortable using those. They just kind of decorate a lamp in my stitching room. But this one, and then I have a couple others that are super, super strong, and these I feel confident using with my project because they are so strong. They are actually, this one is actually kind of hard to pull apart, but it's great. So if you are a needle minder girly or just want a little something extra on your project, needle minder is a great thing to add. Let's talk about scissors now. It seems everybody has an opinion on scissors. If they have tried any kind of fancy scissors, they've got an opinion on scissors. I have tried a few different kinds. I have tried Dovos and Kohana and Golden Forge and Ernest Wright. And then of course I've kind of, I've tried off-brand cheapy scissors that you just get for free with purchase, that sort of thing. Those scissors are awful. They don't cut worth anything. So if you have the means to invest in a good pair of scissors, I think it greatly improves the stitching experience, because when I'm done with a thread, the last thing I want to do is have to hack at the tail to get the darn thing off. I want, with one snip, to clean up the area that I've just worked on. So I will give you the recommendations that I can offer. The first pair I'll share with you, this is from Ernest Wright. These are their embroidery stork scissors. And these are a pretty good price point. I checked the website this morning and they are on back order, but if you are interested in them, I would highly recommend ordering them. For one thing, they're beautiful, they feel great in the hand, and they have a very sharp point. They are made in England, all by hand. I cannot recommend these strongly enough. They're wonderful. Also from Ernest Wright, I purchased these 4-inch print embroidery scissors, and these ones do come with this leather sheath. Now, any of the scissors that you have, before chucking them into a project bag or some other container, I would really recommend making sure that they are in a scissor pouch or have some sort of sheath on them, not just to protect the project bag, but also the tip of the scissors. These ones, as I say, came with the sheath, and you can see that it's branded there. These are the 4-inch print embroidery scissors. These ones are a bit heftier. I do not use these to trim tails or to make pin stitches. I use these to cut large amounts of thread, like thick amounts of thread. And they work really well. They're very sharp, and they can handle cutting a lot of thread at once. And I will demonstrate that in just a moment, actually. Now, getting to another brand, these are Golden Forge scissors. These are the original design. The finger holes are smaller, and so if you have very large thumbs or just large fingers in general, these may not work for you. But more recently, they have designed the same type of scissor, the same blades with larger finger holes, and these come in a couple different sizes. I think the entire Golden Forge range, there are, let's see, these are the cream, and these are the red with the larger finger holes, and then the embellished blades here you can see. But there are also green, blue, pink, and purple, if I remember correctly. And they may in the future come out with more colors, but I would recommend both of these styles. I was given this pair, and when I saw that they were the larger finger holes, I was actually concerned that I wouldn't be able to grip them. I wouldn't be able to handle them the same way that I handle these with the smaller finger holes, because I do have rather thin fingers, but these work just as well. They're just as comfortable in my hand. So I'd say no matter how your fingers are, no matter the width of your fingers, the thickness of your fingers, you should be able to handle these. And these, both of them, have very sharp points. The reason that these Golden Forge scissors are my favorite is because they have such sharp points, sharp blades, great for pin stitches, and I never have to wonder if I'm gonna have to, make a second snip to trim tails and things like that. Okay, the next pair of scissors I will show you is actually much larger. This is a pair of Fiskar shears. I purchased these at a craft store, and I purchased these specifically to cut fabric, and they work really well. I find that the blades are sharp. I mean, if you have done any crafting at all, I'm sure you've handled in your years at least one pair of Fiskars. My mom has about 1 billion. But these are the one pair of Fiskars that I have, and I use them a lot. I just used them last night actually to trim a piece of linen on a project. And basically, just lay out the linen, figure out where exactly you need to cut, and this flat blade sits along the table or the cutting mat, whatever you're using, and then you can very carefully cut your linen as needed. So I would really recommend these, and they weren't terribly expensive. In measuring my linen, sometimes I use an actual measuring tape, and sometimes if it's just a small area that I need to measure, or I just need to determine a margin, I may just use a corner gauge. Corner gauges are really useful. I would recommend having at least one with your toolkit, with your stitchy toolkit. They often have holes in them so that you can determine 1 inch margin on both the top and side, or another hole here to determine. This one allows you to find a 2-inch margin, and then of course if you just go from corner to corner, that would be in this case a 3-inch margin. This one I have is a bit larger, so this one gives me the options to find a 2, a 2.5, a 3, a 3.5, or a 4-inch margin. Now this one also, you can see that it would hold floss if I needed to. I've never used it for that purpose, but this is my favorite corner gauge simply because it's so large and it gives me all these different options. And then there's this one as well. You can see the holes here. Again, a 1 inch, a 2 inch, and a 3 inch is what this would be. And then this one actually has one side has a measuring apparatus there on the edge. If you don't have a corner gauge, you might just have a small ruler like this. This is one that I got from the attic. It is a 4-inch ruler. This has been very helpful as well, and it's just so cute. Next, I want to talk about thread winders. You may have been looking at these things here and wondering what they were, but I think by this time most stitchers understand what these are. These are what I call thread winders. I know sometimes you'll get something small and it's star-shaped, kind of like some people call it a bobbin, some people call it a thread winder. These thread winders are specifically made to allow you to cut lengths of floss evenly. And I have both 9-inch and 12-inch. And the 9-inch will give me 18-inch lengths of floss, and then the 12-inch would give me 24-inch lengths of floss. I have demonstrated this on a previous video, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again just in case you're new to my channel or did not catch that previous video. So you take your floss, whatever it may be. In this case, I've got a beautiful skein of Roxy. This is Duck Spruce. Hannah with her very clever names here. Take the entire skein off of the card, and then we're going to make a bit of a mess. I need to find the end, and sometimes I do this really well and really cleanly, and sometimes I don't. All right, well, I did that about as terribly as anyone could ever unwind a skein. Did not go well, but the trick when it doesn't go well, when it's all like a horrible rat's nest, is not to pull. Don't pull anything really tightly or aggressively. Just gently pull the floss until you find the trouble areas, and then guide those out of the knots that may happen. So that's okay. We've got the skein unwound now, and the next thing we're going to do is we are going to wind it on one of these floss winders. Now these are all from R&R Woodworks KY. You can find them online, and these pieces are very inexpensive, but you can also find them from Keepsakes in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then I'm sure many other local needlework shops sell them as well. And if they're not selling thread winders from R&R Woodworks KY, then they may have thread winders manufactured by someone else, and they basically do the same thing. So if you see what I'm doing here, it's easy enough to figure out. And then of course I'm going to use my print embroidery scissors, and I'm going to trim this right here. Now there's just this little tail here, and because I want it to be even, yes, I'm going to cut all of that. But look at that, very easily cut. And then I have perfect 18-inch lengths of floss that I can now put back onto my card. I put them back on, I put the floss through the hole on the side that has the sticker, and I'll show you why I do that. Oops. Boy, I'm just having a time today. Okay, I've got it on the card. Now, as I said, I put it back on that very specific way because when I go to pull a thread, and I will demonstrate, when I go to pull a thread, I want to see the name of the floss as I'm pulling the thread. And in that way, I know that I'm getting the right floss, because I have messed up before. Basically, just take your needle and gently pull one strand out, and you'll be able to pull it out of the entire skein without pulling anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back on the skein, and then we'll talk about other items. Another item that you may want to consider using is beeswax. This is a bit of beeswax that I purchased from Hoop and Frame quite a while ago. Honestly, I have not used it. I purchased it thinking that it would be a good idea to have some of this in case I wanted to use it, but I never actually have, and it's just been sitting in this little box doing nothing. But a lot of people swear by beeswax. They say that it will, you know, it'll calm down your thread and it will reduce static. That's what a lot of people say. So you have that option, and it isn't particularly expensive. You can get just raw beeswax in bulk online, but you can also get pretty little pieces like that from local needlework shops. Now, in talking with some of my friends about what they might recommend as useful needlework tools, one friend recommended a laying tool. I have actually used a laying tool for ribbon embroidery, but not for cross stitch. If you stitch with 2 strands and you are, you know, you railroad your stitches, or you want to encourage those 2 strands to lay perfectly side by side, a laying tool is something that you may want to consider. And she also recommended for beading that you get what's called a tacky bill. It's basically a CD case, like one of those plastic CD cases that flips open. But on the inside, one side has this tacky material that is there so that you can pour your beads on and then scoop them up as you need to. And the beads don't roll around, they sit on that sticky material, and then the stickiness supposedly does not transfer to the beads. I have not used a tacky bill. When I bead, I often just use little bowls, but I wanted to show you something that I did get recently. Besides the tacky bill and small bowls that you may use for your beading, there are specialized items that you can find specifically made for embroidery that uses beads. So I was contacted by the Homewood team on Instagram. They make a number of products, boxes like this, for embroiderers, and they shared their products with me, you know, showed me the website and everything, and I decided to go ahead and purchase one of these wooden embroidery organizer boxes for myself. I thought it would be very helpful and just pleasing to the eye for my Mill Hill kits, for storage and for the actual beading process. So the box comes, the size of the box is standard. They make the same size, and it easily fits an entire Mill Hill kit. There are 2 different options for lids. There is this acrylic lid, so you can see everything inside. There is also a wooden option that has slits in the top that hold bobbins. The bobbins would stand along the top. But I do not bobbinate my floss, and so I thought the acrylic top would be better for storage purposes, and also just because I like the look of it better. But you can take this entire lid out, and then it comes with this removable tray that can hold your beads. Now you'll see that I have mixed colors together, and that's what Mill Hill has done. It's not that I am restricted by the number of spots for beads. It's that all of these beads came together in one bag, all of these beads came together in another bag, and then these came together in a third bag. So I was able to carefully empty the bags into each little spot here. And this acrylic lid has magnets on all 4 corners, pops right on there. And then you'll see magnets here below. There are magnets on the bottom. And then you see like a little lip here, so it's easy to pull this out. But that sits there. It also comes with this floss organizer. Now, I am not normally one to organize my floss in this way, not even for Mill Hill kits. Usually I just separate all the colors and create little loops with them, and then unwind the loops, pull the thread as I need it, and then wind them back up, and I'll end up with these little loops. And that is something that I have been doing for years, and it really works for me. This system will be new, and I'll let you guys know. But it is nice to have everything looking pretty on a board like this. I was concerned that this floss organizer would be a little rough and might catch the thread, but this is very smooth. The holes are very nicely sanded. Everything is waxed, and I'm very happy with this product. Now, the bottom, you have a couple options. You can get the plain wooden bottom. It's just waxed like this, or they have a couple different color options if you want it painted. But very happy with this piece. And you can see my entire piece of perforated paper fits comfortably in the bottom there. And I've kept the cover photo with it as well. And then my chart, all that fits in here. And then I can just slide the lid on like that. And this little magnet here meets one on the underside of this to keep it in place. So if you are a beader, that is something that you may want to look into. If you want a less expensive option, obviously the tacky bill or just using bowls at home to divide your various beads up will do the trick, I think, because that is a system that I used for a long time, just using little bowls. As long as the bowls have corners, like if you have little square bowls, then it is very easy to then tip the beads on the square back into the bag, because inevitably you will have extras of beads, and if you're like me, you save your extra beads. So that is everything that I have to show you today. Oh, I lied. There's one other thing, and it's very useful. It's very useful. This is a little boo-boo stick. It's basically a mascara stick that has never had mascara on it, so it's clean. This is really useful, and I just used this one just last week because I started a small sampler in red. I got an entire length of the border done up at the top, went to bed, woke up the next morning, decided, nope, I don't want to stitch it in red. I want to stitch it in a completely different color. And I want to use the same fabric. So I ripped out all those red stitches. It wasn't a ton. But what happens is when you pull stitches out, there remains just the tiniest bit of fiber from that thread. So if you just go along and really brush your fabric, brush your linen, then you'll be able to pick up those small little fibers. And I know you cannot see on screen, but there is just the tiniest bit of red fluff in here. So very useful. Sometimes you'll see these come in a little case. It kind of looks like what you would see bubble wands in, but sometimes they're just naked like this. And either way they work, and it's great to have one in a project bag, or at least in your stitchy spot if you have that. So as I say, this is everything that I have to show you today. Additional accessories that you may want to consider but are not necessary would be a scissor stand. If you have multiple pairs of scissors and you want to display them or have access to them easily and protecting the tips, it's a good thing to have a scissor stand. You can also get project bags. Lots of stitchers talk about project bags, and you know, it's a way to organize your items, your projects in a really pleasing way. Like, of course, you could just keep all of your whips in a drawer or in a box, but of course, a lot of us like project bags. Spool cases, if you use 103s or Swag Goblins or Sulkies, there are spool cases from Gutermann that I use. I have shown those on older videos. I don't know that I've shown any of them recently, but those come in a few different sizes and are wonderful for storing spools for specific projects. You can also get counting pins. Now, counting pins, honestly, for me, they're really just for decor. When I have a finished project, a small pillow, I might have a counting pin in it as a piece of decoration. I don't actually use counting pins to count. If I need to count, I use my needle, whatever's in my hand. And as I say, there are different ways to hold your linen. You might want to try a hoop. You might be a Q-snap person, but there are also frames and stands. There are lap stands and floor stands, or lap frames and floor frames. I will link to the one that is sold by the Evertote crew. It's a Hearthside Craftworks Mark II stand. I have not been able to experience that particular stand, but it has rave reviews, and it seems like the couple people that I've talked to that have one of those are really happy with it. It is a large investment, but if you cross stitch a lot and you like having a larger amount of fabric in front of you, and if you like stitching two-handed, a floor frame or lap frame is something to consider. You may also want to look into specific lights for needlework. Some lights come with magnifiers on them as well, and some lights are just lights, no magnifiers. If you get a light with a magnifier, it is very important that you cover that magnifier when you are done stitching. It is very important because fires can be started with light coming through windows and hitting that magnifier. It can happen. It is very unfortunate, but be sure to protect your home and your work by covering that magnifier if you have one. If you feel that you don't need a strong magnifier, but you want to try just a little bit of magnification, I know a lot of stitchers use readers. These are just like magnifying glasses that you can purchase at the drugstore, you know, and you can get them in different strengths. And then to protect your fingers, you may want to try thimbles. I don't know actually anyone who still uses thimbles, but there are these things called thimble pads, and they're just round little stickers, and they have a little bit of fuzz on them, and they adhere to your finger but are easily, you know, taken off. And I know that Colonial makes them. So the same company that makes these Colonial Petite size 28 needles, they also make thimble pads, and it's all one word, thimble pads. So that may be something that you want to try if you're finding that you're poking yourself a lot. And then my last little recommendation would be to get an ort catcher. So orts are just those random little bits of thread, you know, your little tails that you cut off after you've completed a thread. And whether you want to save them to use them as filling for a small finish, or you just want to dump them at the end of the day, the end of the year, anything in between, you may consider getting a small little vessel to hold those orts. And I have one large one that kind of hangs off of a pin cushion. I have that in my stitchy room, and that is from Curry Bungalow. If she is still active on Etsy, I will link her shop below. But oftentimes I will just stitch, and I have a pin cushion next to me with a bunch of needles stuck into it. And as I cut those tails, I'll just kind of stick them into the needles, and that keeps them there on the pin cushion. And then at the end of my stitching session, I will take all of those orts and put them in the larger ort catcher that I have that is hanging off of a rather substantial pin cushion, I will say. So if you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section below. If you have any recommendations for other tools that you think are useful, necessary, a great addition to a stitchy workspace, please leave those in the comment section below as well, so that other stitchers who may be new to this or looking to find other tools to improve their stitching experience can get those recommendations from you. I think that would be very helpful if we can help each other in this way. But as I say, if you have any specific comments or questions for me, you can leave those here. You can also find me on Instagram at @StitchStitchBead. I will leave my email address below if you prefer to contact me that way. But thank you so much for watching, and until next time, enjoy all of your tools and products, and very happy stitching.